All right, we have another, increasing the activity fee to $25 from $25 from $165 to $190 per student. Do I have a motion for that?
Resolved that the Board of Education, Township High School District 2A, Cook County, Illinois hereby approves the registration/activity fee increase of $25 per student, $165 to $190 per student as presented in the July 12, 2011 Board Agenda Packet.
Second. Second by Dan Moon. Any discussion?
I'd like to have Pam read what the new explanation of it is so people know what we're talking about.
Certainly. There is an explanation of fees each year that's presented to parents when they come in for residency. It's in their packet. And the registration and co-curricular fee is what it will read this year. It'll be $190 required. The registration and co-curricular fee is an annual fee to help offset the cost for textbooks, general supplies, and co-curricular activities such as building-wide events. All students are encouraged to participate in co-curricular activities. An added assessment may be made if a textbook is lost or damaged.
Pam, I think earlier on, we already approved, you had to go to print or something, and so you already
Yes.
printed. So, but this text here was not, this is going to be a separate handout for the parents?
It lists a large number of different items, like the technology fee, the activity fee, which is optional.
But is this wording already in the printed, the original wording already in the printed document that you had printed?
The document is attached. There's a stapled document. This is what you're talking about. I anticipated you might want to have seen that.
Okay, so it's, okay.
There it is. We put textbook registration fee $190 when we did send
Okay, so
out to
it's-
students for the first time.
Thank you.
And to the side was the wording you agreed to have me put on
Okay.
that's subject to change.
Okay.
All right, any other questions?
And just, go on.
Go ahead.
Tie two things again. You talked about registering for school and the fee. Does every student who's involved in any activity here, like if they're homeschooled but they take a couple classes or just play a sport or whatever, do they have to register and pay this fee?
It's my understanding, yes, unless they're on the free
Well,
lunch program.
I mean, I
Right.
understand that. Okay,
Yes.
thank
Any
you.
other questions?
You put in here, all students are encouraged to participate in co-curricular activities. And
Right.
the first line says, the registration and co-curricular fee is an annual fee. I'm sorry, it's my biased opinion. I think this is misleading. I think it sounds like you're asking for the addition for some of the activities. And we just cut all these activities.
We didn't cut all the
We
activities.
cut many, but I think this is very
There's still activities
misleading.
available, and there's still events outside of the co-curriculars that, am I right, Pam, that kids get involved in, that are not belonging to clubs or anything else that would come support with this fee, right?
Right, building-wide events that are held that, we have to support, and then there are the incidentals from running those events, right.
Such as,
We host dances, we host after-school activities, there are different kind of social events at time. I'm trying to think some off the top of my head, but,
those typically are sponsored by a club, though.
Right, but they don't
Yeah.
take into account the number of paper towels used, hand soap used, lights,
yeah, it's
energy,
just
water,
to run events.
building, all those are still costs and expenses to the building.
Kids pay ticket fees, though.
Right, but that doesn't go, a portion of those ticket fees don't go back to the building to offset utility, energy, overtime, some of that stuff.
But what we're saying is we're getting money a couple away for some of these events, so it's not really a wash.
I think that's how you're maybe interpreting it.
Okay, any other questions for Pam? All right, Mary Ann, can you go for, I'll wait 5 seconds.
I just have one last question. The kids have a card, an ID, and on their ID, if they pay an activity fee, which is separate, it's marked on their card, and that allows them to go to different activities.
Correct.
So what is that it used to be $25. What does that $25 that kids pay in addition to this fee cover?
Right, like like dances.
Oh,
Yeah.
so we are paying for.
Sporting
Sporting
events.
events.
They don't have to pay a gate fee, they get, just show their ID and get into events, so it's $20 for the activity fee.
So the kids have been contributing to those incidental dances.
But it
And
also
their
gets them to
activity fee.
sporting events.
Gets them in
Gets them into
gets them a lot of
sporting
events.
Yeah.
And the dance fees. So, but we have been collecting money for some of those incidental fees. I just want to make that we have been paying for them.
Okay, any other questions?
If I could just make one additional comment, I mean, you know, we've talked about how we don't have a huge textbook, you know, purchasing policy, and that we're using textbooks that are very old. I think a lot of this does go to textbooks. I did ask Tim for, you know, looking at an accounting for what the money was used for, and we want to look at that to see if it is being expended responsibly. And I understand what you're asking, Laura, and we do definitely want to account for that. But a large portion of it in the past has gone for trying to replace books that are damaged. So.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, Mary Ann.
Mr. Ruska?
No.
Dr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Gretchen?
Yes.
Mr. Cindy?
Yes, okay. The next item on our agenda is to talk about the pay to participate fee. And Art, do you want to talk about that? It's in your packet.
Yeah, I believe we gave you 3 different options that we were looking at. The first option was the $50 per athletic spot, which would bring in revenue of, oh, I'm sorry, I have to go off the options. Option 1 was the original proposal that the administration put out, which was $100 for the first sport, $50 for the second sport, $50 for the third, with a max of $150 per athlete and $200 max per family. And the original document that we had online, that number was not correct. After redoing it, looking at it more closely, the revenue we would bring in was $64,520. The second option was a flat fee of $50 per sport per athlete. Doing that, our revenue was $44,440. And our third option that we put out there now is a $75 per sport per athlete, $66,660. All these numbers are with a 20% cut. We projected, for free lunch student and fees, and a decrease in participation levels.
Pam, you want to just touch on the option 3 compared to option 1, which are similar in revenue? Why you wanted that?
Option 1 is far more challenging to just administer, because you have to cross-reference students within a family that might have a different last name. We have blended families. We have students with the exact last name that appear to be in the same family, but they're not. So there's going to be a large, you know, you're really going to have to, from season to season, make sure that you're tracking things properly. And for bringing in the same amount of revenue, the amount of time that's going to take to do, it just doesn't, to me, seem that practical. Also, it's a loss of a benefit to a family. So let's take a look at it in terms of if you had 2 students in option 3 that were playing one sport, that's going to cost you less than if you had 2 students in option 1 playing 2 sports. They're paying $100 for the first sport for each of those kids. That's $200 for the family. So it's costing them even more than in the flat fee would. So it just seemed like, you know, it had some benefits to families and benefits internally as far as trying to fairly administer it and not make mistakes.
There's another
Yeah.
disadvantage of the number 1 when we were looking at it and that is how would you really allocate the charges to a sport? Because if everybody plays a fall sport, it's going to be $100, and then they play a winter sport, some of them are going to get money, and then if they play a third sport in the spring, it'll be like anybody running track didn't pay, and everybody in cross country, they paid $100. It's a difficult way to allocate the cost if you do it
Yeah.
in the option 1 also. So which one are you recommending then, Pam?
I think Art and I are in agreement, and we met with Dr. Skinkis, and we really think that option 3 is probably the best. Now, if you were concerned about the burden per families and wanted to pay, charge less, then option 2 is in there, as a way, but it would bring in less revenue than we originally proposed, so that was concerning to us, but.
We also had the building administration and myself work at the document that Mr. Cindy presented to you at the 29th meeting. And what we wanted to make sure we clarified to parents is that we would use this money to specifically go back for stuff related to the kids. So when you looked at Art's budget and we saw like dues and fees and then training expenses, we wanted to try to start making some of those expenditures cost neutral. So the first thing that we would apply, any revenue generated from pay to play, would make sure that it covered all the dues and fees so that these guys and girls can participate in the conference activities, the tournament sponsored by the conference, the tournament sponsored by the IHSA, and all the fees related to officials and stuff to run those contests. And then any additional money we figured we'd use towards the expenditure of athletic training, which goes directly for kids' safety and wellness.
Okay, any questions on or feelings of option 1, 2, or 3?
Wasn't the original proposal,
Option 1.
but I thought that was like $43,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Originally. That
It was calculated wrong.
It was calculated wrong.
Art, you want to explain what the miscalculation was?
The way that they had it on that document that's online is they charged $100 for the first sport, but instead of charging $150 for the second sport, because it's an additional $50, they only charge $50. So the third sport, they only charge $50. So that second box where it's $50 for second sport should actually be 280 kids times 150, not 50. So our number was way low. It should actually be roughly $80-some thousand, which is what comes out now in our option 1. It was calculated wrong in the original document.
Any other questions? What about the feelings for
Kevin, so like the supplies is like, what, $42,000 projected? Now, if you're recommending option 3, where again is that extra $24,000 supposed to go to, or?
If we went with option 3, Art, and tell me if I'm explaining this right, what we discussed in our meeting, the first thing we want to use the pay-to-play revenue from would be to offset the $39,660 for dues and fees.
Okay, dues and fees, okay.
And then the additional money, we would try to help offset the cost for, on the athletic trainers, which was the $40,585.
What about supplies? You're taking that out of?
Yeah, or we could use supplies if he doesn't do the
I think you gotta be
handbook.
real careful about saying it's for, I mean, not that I disagree with John said. John had an idea, try to collect enough to cover, like say it's supplies or whatever.
Right.
But the way this was redrafted, it's basically saying it could be used for athletic activities. And you don't want to like have to go through the effort to track it to say whether you put it against dues and fees, supplies, or paid
Right.
services. That's a lot of effort.
Right.
Unless you think it's important, John, from what you said before.
Well,
Yeah, I don't think you need to track it, but just so the public knows, okay, it's roughly 7% of the athletic budget, and it's gonna, that's roughly covers all supplies and 20,000 extra.
Okay.
That, it's more of a message thing, not an
Okay.
accounting thing.
I think, and I agree with John, I think what you can't do is you can't say, here's this lump of money. You want to directionally tell them where you should put it at. And I don't think you would have a problem with that.
No,
Directionally.
that's, yeah.
I think we're spending $800,000 on sports, and we're bringing in 30, 40, 50, 60, depending on what number you choose.
Yeah.
We're still spending a lot of money on sports.
That's right.
Too
Just,
much money.
just to have clarification, Art, we have had discussions, and it's my ignorance coming through. You had talked before on those, the non-district funds where you get fees. There were some tournament fees in there, was there not, that you paid, or is that tournament revenues coming through on those?
Those type of tournaments are in the activity accounts.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not.
Those are just strictly revenue generators. You don't pay any tournament fees in those activity accounts?
No.
Okay,
I mean, summer stuff, but not board accounts.
okay. Because now you have in the write-up here, tournament fees, I didn't want that to be moved off of there into here.
Yeah,
Now we're-
tournament fees in a sense of going to a regular IHSA tournament or like a volleyball tournament. during the year that's part of your, like we'll have a tournament fee here during the season to cover the cost of officials and workers, things like that. Two separate things.
All right, what's, any direction where we want to go, 1, 2, or 3? Does it make a
Dan?
difference? I think that what Art and Pam talking about, try to make it simple, stupid.
And
So-
administration's recommending option 3.
Three? Is that what you guys recommend, 3?
That's what they said.
All right, any other questions for Art, Pam, Kevin?
No.
All right, then I need a motion with a participation fee of $75 put in there. Do I have a motion?
Resolved that the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois hereby approves the pay to participate fee of $75 as presented in the
Per
July.
sport. Per sport.
Pay to participate fee of $75 per sport as presented in the July 12, 2011 Board Agenda Packet.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dan Moon. Can we amend that just to say per sport, per athlete, just so that everything's,
I'll just read it again.
all right.
Can I do that, Dan?
Yeah.
Resolved that the Board of Education, Township High School District 208, Cook County, Illinois hereby approves the pay to participate fee of $75 per student per sport as presented in the July 12, 2011 Board Agenda Packet.
I second that second.
Will that work?
Yes.
Just one clarification so that I understand it. It's taking the number of students times 80% because you're anticipating a 20% waiver
We're gonna reduce
and
it.
multiplying by $75. That's a simple calculation that you calculated out, okay.
And then, just to back this up even more, you're going to overly communicate, because this is our first year doing this with the parents, coaches, the parents, everything. Okay, and then you're going to put up on the website too? Okay.
We're not gonna approve the policy at this point, right?
If you want to, I have no problem with it. I think that he needs to get a form out, am I right? But I don't think you need to worry about the program with the form, do you?
We have all the forms, everything ready, we just have to change the amount. I think policy-wise of how we're going to implement it, I guess we need to know how
Well,
we're going to do it.
there's two things on the policy. I sent an email in case you didn't get it. One is, I have a question of why is there a penalty only for seniors? Is that an error on
That's
here?
the fourth one, only for seniors, that last part,
Okay.
the last season, spring season, because we have nothing else to penalize them for except those either prom or senior picnic.
Okay.
The other three would fall for anybody else, because you'd have another sport to play, or you'd have, so we
Right.
have to have some type of,
But if you read the beginning of it, it says seniors will be subject to social restrictions such as being barred for participation in dances. You have dances earlier in the year, like,
right, well, you wouldn't bar them from them, because you'd still have those first three ones to
Okay.
bar them from. So if you got to the fourth, that would only be the spring season of their senior year that they would hit that fourth criteria. or fourth.
the only other point is, I would suggest you pick a point and stay at midpoint of a season, because even in the same season, like spring, fall, the individual sport, the midpoint's gonna vary, and that's gonna make it hard for your business office to determine what it is. So,
Well, it's easy to make I can make a
and when's the
calendar of
midpoint? Depends upon whether they go to state, conference.
Regular
something.
season, start and end date.
Okay.
midpoint.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very easy to make a calendar for each sport, or we could come up with
Okay.
one single date, it's fine with me.
Okay,
Either way.
just
Can
to
I
make
say right
sure
now, what I
easy
would
to
do, just
manage.
to build up on Tim's point is, for that sport, even have it outlined, even on the website, this is the midpoint.
Oh, exactly, yeah, that's
You know what I
I'm
mean? So this, for volleyball, this is the date.
I think
Because
And the
it's gonna
coach is
vary.
gonna-
I would include it right on the form.
Yeah.
Pam, and you could generate a calendar, I'll look at it and approve it.
Yeah.
So that's
Very
fine,
clear.
as long as you could, it's easy to manage.
I think you should just pick one date.
Yeah.
That's.
One date.
That's
for-
what I would do.
One
Yeah.
date for each of the
Season.
fall, winter,
That's
spring.
fine, yeah.
Sure.
Okay. All right, any other things?
I think it's
One,
important for us to keep track, if there's any effect, especially like on freshmen joining sports here, see if we have to revisit this for the winter sports in case there's a dramatic drop-off in freshman participation.
Okay. All right, anything else? Mary Ann?
Dr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Aye.
Mr. Walsh?
Aye.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Goodson?
Yes.
Ms. Ruska?
Aye.
Mr. Cindy?
Aye.